Things are not looking terribly good for David Ellison and Paramount Skydance right now, trying to win the war against Netflix for the future and the soul of Warner Brothers and maybe for Hollywood itself. Breaking this afternoon and this evening, we've got something that originally came via Bloomberg, suggesting that it's looking like Warner Brothers is going to reject this $108 billion bid that came from Paramount about a week to 10 days ago now. You can see here, we're going to be covering this story. And Netflix right now is still in the catbird seat. There's a lot of moving parts to this story. And I told you about a week ago that there was one thing that Paramount could do to put this over the top. Well, maybe I was wrong. It might be two things based on what we're about to read from a few sources, including Puck Magazine. But the hits just keep on coming with articles like this from Variety Magazine. Looks like somebody took a page out of OnlyFans. I'm sure it was a mess. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias. And of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday and Wednesday afternoon right here at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of what we think is going to officially happen maybe by the time you see this video. And maybe by the time you see this video, Paramount may already have a bit of a plan to combat this. But here we have it right here from Reuters. Warner Brothers likely to reject a $108.4 billion Paramount bid. Back Netflix in bidding war, sources say. Warner Brothers Discovery's board could announce a decision as early as Wednesday on Paramount Skydance's $108.4 billion takeover bid, with the board likely to advise shareholders to vote against the offer, according to sources familiar with the matter. Now, yes, as we previously discussed, this was more or less a hostile offer by Paramount trying to go directly to shareholders. But the shareholders are still going to be overall more likely inclined to listen to the advice of Warner Brothers and their board and their head honcho, David Zaslav. It's not a big surprise. That's pretty stock standard fare for most anything in this situation, unless the disparity is so great that it begs the question of negligence on the part of the board. We're not there yet, and I went into details of why I thought that was a few days ago. Namely, when you look at the Netflix offer of just shy of $28 a share, and then the offer by Paramount coming in late after the Netflix bid of roughly $30 per share, because Paramount is trying to acquire the entirety of Warner Brothers, as opposed to Netflix only looking to peel off the intellectual properties, the film and television studios, and of course the crown jewel in Netflix's world, that would be the streaming service HBO Max. There's a disparity there, because David Zaslav, as we've told you many times before, believes that that spin-off node that is the linear broadcast side of things, the CNNs, the TNTs, and the Discovery networks, is probably worth at least $5 a share if and when it were to list in a spin-off sometime about a year from now. Meaning that the total all-in price that David Zaslav and the Warner Brothers board has in mind right now is a lot closer to $34 a share than it is $30. If Paramount can get itself to $34 a share, we got a horse race, folks. The decision to recommit Netflix's buyout offer would mark the latest twist in the race for assets that include Warner Brothers' storied film and TV studio and its extensive film and television library, whose portfolio include classics ranging from Casablanca to Citizen Kane to contemporary favorites like Harry Potter and Friends, HBO and HBO Max streaming service. By the way, if you're confused on the issue of Friends, remembering fondly that you watched that on NBC, you're not wrong. But like so many television shows out there, Friends was not actually made by the broadcast company that, well, broadcasted. In this case, it was produced by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers makes a tremendous number of television shows that don't ever air on a Warner Brothers owned network. And the same goes true for Paramount. CBS Television Studios is one of the most prolific makers of successful TV shows, many of which don't air on CBS. Warner Brothers Discovery, no surprise, declined to make any comment, which is exactly what one would expect in this situation because Warner Brothers is set to make their own official comment, again, according to Bloomberg, likely as early as, well, by the time you see this video. The winner, be it Netflix or Paramount Skydance, will gain a big advantage in the streaming wars by locking up a deep content library that has long been an acquisition target. And I can't stress enough, that is what Netflix is really and truly after. When you think about the subscription services as far as streaming goes, let's not kid ourselves. There's probably a tremendous amount of overlap of the subscribership of HBO Max and Netflix. Hell, there's probably an enormous amount of subscribership overlap between Netflix and damn near any other streaming service out there. It's just what it is. Netflix is the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room, and everybody else is just along for the party. What Netflix is really after is the library of content that Warner Brothers holds all the rights to, and the distribution rights to, specifically. Ownership and distribution, I should say. It's going to give Netflix an enormous library of classically very popular film and television that will be on the Netflix platform without Netflix having to write billion-dollar checks each and every year anymore to Warner Brothers itself to license these shows if they can get their hands on them and they're not already licensed elsewhere. Now, remember, if there are Warner Brothers pieces of content that are licensed out to, say, Peacock right now, Friends being one of the most prominent examples because, hey, that's where it originally broadcast, or something else out there that may be on an associated streaming service like a Tubi or a Freevee or Amazon Prime, or we can go on down the list. Those contracts, short of Netflix renegotiating them, should they be successful in their bid to win Warner Brothers, are going to stay right exactly where they are for now. They're not just going to disappear from those services the minute Netflix wins the bid. Netflix will have to do something legally to get them back sooner than expected, or at least sooner than what any contracts would dictate that were previously signed by Warner Brothers and these other streamers. Now, this next part is where we are going to take a wild deviation from the main story because, there's a wrinkle in time today, that's for sure, and it does have a bit of a Trump flavor to it. In regulatory filings, Paramount has said that its bid is superior to Netflix's offer and would enjoy a cleaner path to regulatory approval. Its offer is financed by $41 billion in new equity, which is backed by the Ellison family and Redbird Capital, and $54 billion of debt commitments, meaning that they're going to borrow the money. They're going to use leverage from places like Bank of America, Citibank, and Apollo. Now, here's the kick. Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners, which was one of Paramount's financing partners, is exiting the battle, according to Bloomberg. Now, for those of you who don't know or may not remember, Jared Kushner, a very successful member of a very successful American family for quite some time, also happens to be the son-in-law of one President Donald J. Trump. Which brings us back to this funny little headline here from Variety earlier, suggesting that Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners pulls out of Paramount. Insert filthy, dirty joke here.
Okay, you know what you do? You buy yourself a tape recorder, you just record yourself for a whole day. I think you're going to be surprised at some of your phrasing.
So on Wednesday, December 17th, we simply know that Jared Kushner's private equity firm says that it is dropping out of the group of firms that planned to back Paramount Skydance's hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. I wonder what might have precipitated that decision. Donald Trump blasts the Ellisons amid their Warner Brothers bid. If they are friends, I'd hate to see my enemies, says Donald Trump. For some reason, he lashed out again at Paramount Studios Skydance chief David Ellison and his father Larry, complaining about his treatment by CBS News 60 Minutes News Magazine. Quote, for those people that think I'm close with the new owners of CBS, please understand that 60 Minutes has treated me far worse since the so-called takeover than they have ever treated me before. Trump posted on Tuesday. Today is the day I record this, over on Truth Social. Trump was asked last week at a White House briefing with reporters if he was in favor of Paramount's rival bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. He responded saying, quote, "I don't know enough about it," saying he had to look at how each proposed deal would impact the market share for Netflix and Paramount Skydance. Trump added, quote, "I mean, none of them are particularly great friends of mine. You know, I want to do what's right." Trump was also asked if the backing of Paramount's bid by Affinity Partners, the investment firm led by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, would influence his opinion. Trump said that, quote, "I've never spoken with him about Paramount Warner Brothers bid." But I think this is the primary kicker of the issue right here that Variety correctly points out. In the past, Donald Trump has bragged about his friendship with David Ellison and his father, Larry Ellison. Indeed, Trump recently pushed Paramount to move forward on Rush Hour 4, if you can still believe that, from Brett Ratner because the president loves the action comedy movie franchise. But Donald Trump appeared to be triggered, Variety's word, not mine, over a 60 Minutes interview that aired on December 7th on CBS with Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, who has since, I believe, decided that she was going to not run for re-election. The one-time Trump supporter who has recently criticized the president on a range of issues. Trump complained in a Truth Social post on December 8th that since the Ellisons bought Paramount, quote, 60 Minutes has actually gotten worse. So if you want my no BS opinion on what happened with the love affair between Larry Ellison and Donald Trump, it probably has a lot to do with CBS. Hell, it may have nothing more and entirely everything to do with CBS, and specifically 60 Minutes. And as we talked about before, Donald Trump has made comments about CNN and Warner Brothers, to be fair, and we've seen David Ellison in the past week talk about how absolutely CNN would get overhauled if he got his hands on it. I'm thinking that David Ellison should probably look a little bit closer to home first if he even has a chance of getting his hands on CNN next. But one of the more interesting bits recently is this piece from Puck Magazine and William Cohen over there. Now, he does a great job by and by, day in, day out, and I really do enjoy his write-ups, even though I don't always agree politically, hell, most of the time don't agree politically, with guys like William Cohen and even Matt Bellany. But I have mad respect for the great work they do in covering these kinds of stories and getting the dirt and the details on things that a lot of others frankly don't. This article from Puck titled Ellison Irrevocable Trust Issues. Despite their numerous bids for all of Warner Brothers Discovery, a rift has opened between the principals at Paramount Skydance and the board and the advisors of their target company, namely Warner Brothers Discovery, at least for now. Can money heal all wounds? It's actually the perfect question to ask to open this article, and the answer, in my opinion, is a resounding, unequivocal yes.
I love gold.
So as I mentioned before, the magic number for David Zaslav is likely close to $34 a share if you want the whole kit and caboodle. Otherwise, again, David Ellison believes the spinoff of even the weakened linear assets is still going to be worth around $5 a share once it actually happens. Meaning, if Netflix is going to pony up $28 and the shareholders are going to get another $5, perhaps $6 a share on the open market following the spinoff, well, that's closer to $34 in total. That's the magic number that David Zaslav is looking for. The details in this article are numerous and frankly very complex. It would take a good while to really go through this article piece by piece, but let me give you the high points here. The problem that David Zaslav and Warner Brothers is having is twofold. Number one, and most importantly, they're a little concerned about whether or not the actual contract that Paramount Skydance, the tender offer that they delivered, really and truly promises the full stop backing of Larry Ellison himself, or at least Ellison family money. In other words, if the financing issues fall apart with other partners in this deal for Paramount Skydance, and yes, there is a Saudi component, and this is another bugaboo for Warner Brothers, namely that they said, well, the component from the Saudis looks a lot bigger than what Paramount was letting on. Paramount is saying that it wasn't. Variety and other sources are suggesting that Paramount is understating the Saudi involvement. However, As it stands right now, none of those elements would have any voting power or ability to get on the board of any finally merged product between Warner Brothers and Paramount. So that's a whole other issue. But namely, they wonder, is Larry Ellison's money really behind this? The source of any equity financing was always going to be a critical factor in the tug of war between Paramount and Netflix for Warner Brothers, and the involvement in foreign investors, after all, could trigger additional regulatory hurdles, such as an unappealable review by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States or a lengthy federal communications evaluation process. And yes, for those of you who have heard me say before that the FCC would really not be involved in this, that is true, but for the fact that a foreign entity from a foreign nation state would be involved in the purchase of such a company as Warner Brothers. Now, again, if the Saudi investor group that is part of the larger group of Paramount Skydance and their partners to buy Warner Brothers is going to be contractually prohibited from exercising any type of legal control over the entity, in other words, they're going to be a silent financial partner, then the idea of Paramount is that this will assuage any type of additional regulatory scrutiny. Yet, as we now know from P-Sky's tender offer documents and various press releases, the Variety story, this was about the Saudi investors, was largely accurate. In fact, those three sovereign wealth funds were providing a combined $24 billion, or 60% of the $40 billion in equity that the Ellisons and their partners were ponying up. Someone familiar with Paramount Skydance's bidding strategy said they were not ready to disclose their partners at the time because they were still just talking to the sovereign wealth funds. And their allegation of, quote, inaccurate reporting referred only to the numbers and the fact that no deal with the funds had been reached. Indeed, Variety correctly stated that the Ellisons were putting together a $71 billion bid. Regardless, the Variety mess sowed credibility questions for the Warner Brothers Discovery Board and its advisors. Quote, what's sort of clear is the Ellisons have shown time and time again that they don't mind lying. A source close to the deal told me, meaning William Cohen at Puck Magazine. The Variety article is a very good article. They were the first to break the news of the sovereign wealth fund's involvement. P-Sky lied on the record denying it. So taking this unnamed source that spoke to Mr. Cohen at Puck Magazine at his word, which I have no reason not to at this point, that's probably not giving Warner Brothers a lot of good feels. Now, what came next was Netflix's offer that Warner Brothers accepted. And then, of course, Paramount tried to come in once again with an even bigger one, this time getting up to about $108 billion. But those trust issues lingered, and something else lingered as well. The final bid also did not seem to the Warner Brothers Discovery folks to have the Ellison guarantee that Warner Brothers Discovery and its advisors coveted, in the terms they wanted at least. Warner Brothers representatives also told the Ellisons that they had the regulatory concerns with their foreign equity investors. Warner Brothers shared all of this feedback after the December 1st final bid deadline to provide the Ellisons with one more shot at a revised bid before a deal was signed with Netflix. Things quickly went downhill from there, and on December 3rd, Paramount's lawyers at Quinn Emanuel sent that bizarre letter questioning the, quote, fairness and adequacy of the process, in case of Warner Brothers, that is, which caught even some members of the P-Sky team by surprise. The same day, Zaz called David Ellison and explained his ongoing concerns with their equity financing. The lawyers for both sides had a similar conversation, highlighting in particular the questions surrounding Tencent, given its close ties to the Chinese government. Now, to note, since then, it looks like that Tencent is also no longer part of the offer, trying to assuage that concern as well. My understanding is that Tencent's portion of this deal was never north of $1 billion. At this point, with a total price of $108 billion, we were talking about less than 1%, even if they were still in there. Despite the Ellisons' revisions and repeated promises, the board of Warner Brothers still had serious questions about their commitment to underwriting the equity for the deal. There were questions about the Larry J. Ellison Revocable Trust, which P-Sky claimed owned 1.16 billion Oracle shares worth $220 billion, representing a over 40% stake in the company. Among them, the Oracle 2025 proxy lists Ellison as the owner of the shares, not his trust. Then there was the problem of Larry's, quote, limited guarantee, which is included on page 185 of the tender offer filing, which circumscribed Larry's, quote, aggregate liability. In case the equity is not funded, in this case by the financing partners, which include the banks, the equity side of things, everybody out there under the sun, if the case the equity is not funded to 7% of the overall $40.7 billion equity commitment in the offer, the other 60 some odd billion being debt that they're going to take on from Bank of America and whatnot, the document refers to as the cap. In other words, if any one of the cross-conditioned equity investors drops out and the deal falls apart, Warner Brothers could only go after Larry Ellison for $2.8 billion, not the full $40.7. The debate between Paramount and Skydance right now is whether or not the read of that portion of the tender offer is accurate or not. Of course, Warner Brothers is saying, hey, this is what it says. We don't like it. And Paramount's on the other side saying, no, it's good. You've got Larry behind this whole thing. Again, this can easily be resolved with tweaking of the language, number one. But number two, the offering price still has to be the right one. But that doesn't mean the Ellisons still can't pull this out. Far from it, says Cohen. After all, David Ellison has already said publicly that P-Sky's $30 a share bid was not their, quote, best and final offer. Indeed, the Warner Brothers stock closed Friday at nearly $30 a share, suggesting that a higher bid is sure to come. So once again, can money heal all wounds?
All right. How much?
The answer is absolutely yes, and I've been saying this for weeks. If the Ellison crew at Paramount Skydance can get the offer up to $34 a share, which is what David Zaslav has been looking for based on Warner Brothers' own valuation of the totality of the company, then yes, I think the winds can and will shift. The regulatory side of things is what's up in the air. And neither one of these entities, regardless of what Trump has said in the past or Trump said today, it's still going to be something that they're going to have to fight through, and neither one of them is guaranteed. I do still firmly believe that based on the sizes and scales of these companies, that a merger approval between a Warner Brothers and a Paramount is still far more likely between a Warner Brothers and a Netflix. But hey, I'm not perfect and I could be wrong. Time will tell, but I think this fight is far from over. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and we'll see you on the live show right here on Valiant Renegade at 6 p.m. Eastern. Take care.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.